Welcome, John. Thanking you for starting the event with a smile.
Good. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to this event. Thank you very much for coming, or thank you very much for listening to the recording. I do apologize for my cold, but we are going to progress on regardless. We're talking about one of the topics I find really interesting and exciting, sort of unlocking potential with hypnosis. I'm really pleased to have John LaValle, who is the president of the Society of Neurolinguistic Programming, who is one of the sort of world's experts on it. And I'm going to hand him the baton first, just to introduce himself. Then I'm going to say a little bit about me and a little bit about the webinar. John.
Hi. Hey, thank you. I'm good. Happy to be here. Yeah, I've been doing this thing with this language and NLP for, I don't know, close to 40 years now. It does kind of connect with hypnosis because it has everything to do with language. And it's fascinated me since I started learning about it, actually. I'm looking forward to doing this podcast with you all. And hopefully maybe we'll get some questions towards the end. Who knows? But you know what? You've all probably had a long day already, because for me, it's only not even lunchtime. So let's go. Let's kick it off.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. So let's start at the beginning. 2 questions to start with. The first one, what is hypnosis? And actually, let me throw it at John first. I will give you my version. If somebody asked you, John, what is hypnosis? What would you answer?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, hypnosis is hard for a lot of people to define, but it's actually the criteria for knowing if first of all, you're all using hypnosis, whether you know it or not. The quality of it is always going to be the question. But it's about altered states, internal states, and where you're paying attention to. It can be used for lots and lots and lots of different things. You're like I said, you're using it already every day. As a matter of fact, I believe, because we have some trainers in Israel, and they would tell us that they're not allowed to use hypnosis in Israel, and especially in the military. And so an example of that is they use it every day in the military because they have to use commands. So it's all about language, how you use the language, all of those things. It's not difficult to learn, but it's a little bit, I don't want to say difficult, because it's not difficult to learn. To fine tune your skills would require some practice with language. To get your sentences formed just right, or basically the way you would like to get the messages across. And again, you're already using it. So if you're in business, you're not getting things done that you want to get done, or you can't get other people to get things done you want to get done, hypnosis might be worth looking at. It doesn't mean you're going to swing a watch in front of their eyes like this either. I don't even have a watch like that. So it's about altered states. And the definition of that, by the way, because people say, well, I have like many choices. No, you have altered one or another one. And then from that one, then you can go to another one. If you keep that in mind, it makes hypnosis and the understanding of hypnosis very easy to understand. So it's a matter of, are you going in your head, or are you paying attention outside your head? So one place is where it's good, one place where it's not so good. But again, depends on what are you using it for. And I actually tell people I don't use hypnosis. I say I don't do hypnosis, because to me, hypnosis has some certain things around the definitions of it or the perception of it. Like I'm a business guy, and I've been in business for all my life. And if I were going to help someone, let's say I was going to have a coaching session, simple coaching meeting with them, they'll ask me, "Are you going to hypnotize me?" And I have to say, well, I don't know why. I don't really do hypnosis. Do you want me to hypnotize you? And because I want to find out what their answers are. And they might say, well, you're not going to make me cluck like a chicken, are you? And I tell them that's a different form of hypnosis. And I don't want to, ask one person one time, I said, well, I don't even know what a chicken sounds like. Can you tell me what a chicken sounds like? And they go, cluck, 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 cluck. And I go, see that? You don't need hypnosis. If you do it right, people will give you the answer anyway. So this is going on all the time, really. It's in print media. We have no idea how much hypnosis is going on if we want to use that term. I can give it different terms, actually, for what's going on. So,
okay. Okay,
Yep.
you've answered that question well, so I'm not going to add to it. Although I do sometimes like the idea that we're all in a hypnotic state of some sort, and sometimes our job is to wake people up. It's not to put them into a state; it's to take them out of a not useful hypnotic state and to wake them up. I'm also going to say some of my clients, I wouldn't want to talk about hypnosis, but some of them really like it. And they actually like the idea of just doing a 10-minute relaxation session at the
Sure.
end of each session just to chill out. Because sometimes the guys I work with are really hardworking and they just want a time to let go and float away. So although some people really dislike the word, some people are attracted to it. The next thing I want to move on to is why would a business person actually learn this stuff? So I'm going to come up with 4 ideas that I have, and then I'll throw it over to you to see if there's anything you want to add. Firstly, not necessarily getting good at it, but understanding some of the principles. And we're going to be talking about some of the principles later, is that it will tune up your general communication skills. People have been using hypnosis to influence for tens of thousands of years, and just clicking into some of the principles will help you tune up what you do. Secondly, and this may be even more beneficial, it helps us communicate with ourselves. My view is the more congruent we are with ourselves, it means that the more, what's the right word? The more effective we speak to anybody else. Because if we're clear what we want and we can articulate it, we simply become more congruent. And if we become more congruent, our messages become more powerful. The third reason is that some of the hypnosis stuff came from helping people change. So if we want to help people change, learning about this stuff helps us help others develop. And the fourth one I add for sort of a bit of fun almost. It's exciting. It's fun stuff to explore. Sometimes it's right to do all the factual things and all the logical things, but sometimes it's like to be totally creative and throw the cat out the basket, or whatever the right metaphor is, and explore the unexplorable. And hypnosis is a way of doing it. So very simple terms. That's why I think it's worth anybody that has a interest in communication studies a bit of this. John, anything you want to add or say?
Yeah, when I first got interested in, I was interested in it from the first time I got interested in hypnosis. I don't know, I might have been 12 or 13 years old, and I had comic books and things like that, and in the back of some of these things were advertisements where, you could, it had, lightning bolts coming out of some of these eyes and saying, you could hypnotize girls and things like that. And I thought, well, I don't know if I'd want to hypnotize the girls, but what else can I do with this hypnosis thing? But as I started to grow up a little bit, I took more and more of an interest in it because it had everything to do with my own mental state. I learned, one of the things I learned, even getting into NLP, of course, was that I learned I have choices, but I didn't know how to get to those choices or even how to make those choices in ways that I could make those choices for me and not for somebody else. So my first real good experience was with self-hypnosis, because I had a couple of friends, and one of them said, "Oh, I do hypnosis," because I happened to bring it up. And I said, "You do?" He said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have some tapes if you want to try it out and try it out on yourself." And I thought, well, give me one of those tapes. And I did. And I remember, because I said to him, I said, what can I do with this when I listened to it? And he told me the following thing. He said, think about something you want to be able to accomplish, something you want to do. And I said, okay. And then keep that in your mind, and then go and listen to the tape. And I thought, okay, no harm there. And I did. And the simplest thing that I wanted to do was that if I was going to go into this hypnotic state, this trance state, if that's what you want to call it, really, is I want to be able to come out of that trance state, even if the tape is finished. I want to be able to stay in that state. And I clocked myself before I went in. I said, I want to be able to come back out in about 13 and a half minutes, where I would wake up in 13 and a half minutes. And I thought, because if I could do that, I could program myself or hypnotize myself to wake up at a specific time every day if I really wanted to. I mean, my mind was already turning and spinning. And that's what I did. So I listened to the tape. These are all cassette now, man. This is talking Walkman and things. And that's what I did. And it was at a lunchtime. I went to some, an empty office, actually. Put myself, listen to the tape. Boom. I don't remember if the tape stopped after it was finished. I wasn't not aware. And the crazy thing is, in most of the times when you're in hypnotic states, you're in a state of hyper awareness, except you're not really sure what you're aware of or not aware of. I mean, that's I guess to me, that was the tricky part. But I woke up. I woke up, my eyes opened up, and I said, oh, looked at my watch, and there it was, 13 and a half minutes later. And I was like, okay, well, if I can do that, just doing self-hypnosis, gee, I wonder what else I can do. So creativity, go in and figure things out, just relax. Michael brings up an excellent point. Sometimes during the day, things happen. You know that if you're in business, things out of your control happen. So now what? Because the state that you are in is going to determine how you behave. So if you're having a rough one, somebody just messed up a major deal for you. You're not going to say, oh, great, let's have a drink or let's go have a party about that. You're going to be all wired up, but that's not necessarily going to be good for you. So if you know enough about how to relax and go back inside, do a little bit of hypnosis on yourself, guess what? You can change your internal state. People don't realize we're really like neurochemical beings. We're electrical system, we have chemical system. This is what we're made up of. So how can you get control over yourself before you can start to help other people to do the things that they ought to be doing too? To me, that encompasses it. And I guess some of the reasons I agree with you, Michael. I mean, my son got interested in hypnosis, and he was only 4 years old. And I thought, why would he be interested in hypnosis? Because he was in daycare, and they told him, and this moved on, by the way, all the way through his school system, and they told him, because the kids would do crazy things. I don't know, maybe one of their parents was a hypnotist or something. I don't know. Would say, oh, if you want to feel really good, just close your eyes and think about blah 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 blah, and you'll feel better. And one of the teachers there said, no, please do not ask the other children to close their eyes and think of something. But this propagated all the way up into middle school, where they were told that you're not allowed to hypnotize the other children, is basically the word they started using. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. I probably would have passed more tests when I was in grammar school or middle school if I'd have closed my eyes to think of the answers, as opposed to sitting there with my eyes open like this and staring at a desk like this and trying to remember the answer to things. So I really I developed a real sincere and I guess serious interest in this mind control thing, because that's what it is. People say, is this about mind control? I go, yeah, it is. It's about you controlling your mind.
Yeah, no, I get it. I like that. And there is something also about better communication between our conscious and unconscious thinking, whatever that might mean. But I think there is something powerful, because I think our consciousness is less of us than we think. And if we can connect with ourselves, almost as I said earlier, if we can connect with ourselves better, everything sort of gets a bit better. So the next thing I'd like to move on to, the way I find useful exploring this is to, if I'm teaching anybody to go into hypnosis or to learn about hypnosis, I find talking through three approaches useful, and we're going to talk through these. There are lots of different ways of doing it, but this is just a starting point you could use. The first one is look at some of the principles of hypnosis, because these can be useful in our communication skills generally. Second is to look at some of the language patterns and to play with some of the language. And the third, look at some of what might happen if you were doing a formal, whatever that means, hypnosis session. And by looking at those three things, then you begin to get a practical understanding of what this stuff is all about. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to talk about some of the principles that I think are important, but then just throw it at you and you add to some things. The first principle I'm going to add is something about ethics. Some people don't realize, but as they start exploring this stuff, they actually get better at influence. I know that's the purpose of it, but some people some people don't realize that it's actually working, and they begin to influence not everybody, but they influence some people more. And I think it's important to realize that as we get better at influence, we also have a responsibility of where we lead people to. So I don't want to over-reg it, but as I say, we don't want to influence people to do things that's not in their interests, because they'll sort of come back and hit us. I'm sort of joking about it, but there's a touch of seriousness I find through the whole thing. So there's something about be aware that if you practice it, you might actually get good. And you might actually get good before you realize it. and I've had enough stories of this that I'm not making it up. The second one is the power of ambiguity. I find it really fascinating. There are times that we want to be absolutely precise. If you're designing an airplane, when you screw it together, you don't want it to fall from the sky. So you want to be precise about it. But there are other times you want to stimulate people's creativity. And if you use ambiguous language, you're sort of forcing them to fill in the bits. And in many cases, the answers they will come up with will be better than the ones you've got. So ambiguity to me is something, the use of ambiguity in the right place, because it creates creativity. Something else is the concept of pacing and leading. That sometimes the way to get people to follow you and do what you say is to become like them and then lead them. It's almost you I may not be using the perfect words, but you accept people for who they are. You join them in their map. And then when you've joined them in their map, it's much easier to move them somewhere else. So this concept of pacing and leading. And another one that I think is useful in all life is there's a concept called utilization, where whatever happens, we can use. Now, it's taken me a long time to generalize this in life, but in a hypnotic situation, if you're hypnotizing somebody and there's a thunderclap, you can actually bring it in. As you hear that thunderclap, it may have brought you out, but as the sound goes down, you will go even deeper. And of course, there is a concept in real life that anything that happens, we can use. Even things we don't like, even things that are amazingly inconvenient. There is something about the mindset saying, whatever happens out there, we can find a way of using it. So, John, can I throw it to you just some of the principles that we learn in hypnosis that are just useful for people generally?
Yeah, sure. The ethics one is really, 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 really important because, again, and you put it really well, Michael, you can be very good at something and not realize how really good you are.
Yes.
And helping people, and then inadvertently influence them somehow. If you take a look at all the things that have occurred at other times in history, where cults, they would program groups of people, even and things like that. That stuff is real. It's not just hypnosis. There are other things, of course, that they would use, but including what the people were allowed to eat, what they were drinking, things like that. But the fact of the matter is that person who would engage in that thing in order for them to get other people to generate behaviors for the person who's doing that hypnosis, if that's what it is, they don't have good ethics. So that definitely is important. And then the other thing is, it's not just words and everything. Everything that you do as a communication is an intervention. And I teach our people this one because we teach practitioners, we teach trainers and things. I'm going to say it again. Everything you do is an intervention, whatever it is. I had someone one time said to me, they called me up and they said, "How you doing, John?" Good. They said, "You remember me?" I said, "Yes, I remember you." And they said, "Well, I would like to have a private session with you for something." I said, "Okay." Yeah. And what is that? I don't want to know necessarily what it is. I don't want to hear a problem, but why are you picking on me here to do this with? There's so many other people out there. That was really my question. He said, you said one thing to me 20 years ago, and it changed my life. And I thought, I better find out what that was.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I might be able to bottle that thing. And I said, "And what was that? Do you remember?" And he said, "No, that's why I'm calling you." And I said, "Okay, well, that's probably not going to happen." And the other thing is that, and if you don't think that you're I don't care how you grew up, if you don't think your mom had you hypnotized in a lot of ways, then you missed her hypnosis skills. For example, like if I stepped out of line, mom would look at me in a certain way, like, and I knew that look meant, okay, time to stop that silliness. And if I didn't do that, I get another look. And that look meant, this is your last warning. But there were no words. She didn't say, okay, knock it off. They just looked at you. You're in company someplace, or wherever you were. And so even without realizing that's what they're doing, they do realize that they're doing this to get a certain effect. So everything that we do is an intervention. I can look at my granddaughter and smile at her, and she'll smile back. Now, you would think that's a natural phenomenon, but it is now, because I've smiled at her enough times that I know what the stimulus would be for me to get that response back. So if her parents, for example, were giving her a hard time, let's say, because she was jumping around, misbehaving, whatever the case is, and I looked at my granddaughter and just gave her a little wink, she knew I was going to make things okay. And she would know that. And she'd come over and say, hi, Pop, Pop. And then the parents would stop, because they knew. They knew too. They said, oh boy, she's going over to grandpa now. That's going to be the end of that. Now, so my question is that hypnosis or not hypnosis? It's everything that we do. Sometimes people will make a particular look on their face.
Yeah.
But that's because they want to communicate something. Everything. I cannot overemphasize that. We're not even aware. There are sounds we're not aware. You guys and gals will know about this one. You walk home, you came home, you got home late one night, and there's your significant other in the house, and they go, where'd you been? You go, I had to work late. And they go, mm-hmm. Well, you know what that means. That means later on, So even the sounds we make are a communication. And we can manage people. I worked with a guy. He was a vice president, human resources, and he was my boss actually for a while. And he would sometimes just look at somebody and kind of step up like that, move back, and then just kind of go like that, and it would have a look on his face. And for somehow it didn't work for me. I even asked him one time, I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm thinking. And I said, okay. But for some of the people in the department, they took that as he didn't care. And I thought, no, I know this guy. He does care. He doesn't know what to say, and sometimes he doesn't know what to do. But his communication was he just doesn't care. That's what they picked up from him. There's a whole idea of all of these things. But the important part, you're a manager in a company, or you manage people, or if you're a parent, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Everything you do is an intervention. Every little move you make, every communication is an intervention of some sort, which means you're applying something, whether you know it or not, into what's going on in that interaction between you and the other person or people.
No, and actually that reminds me of something else. So thank you for saying that, Laura, which is one of the principles is we want to notice what's going on. So awareness, actually just shutting up, getting out of our heads and just noticing what other people are doing is a very good way of starting to learn. And some of my students who do particularly well, they pick a little bit up, but it's not necessary. They pick up an idea for me, but then they just spend their time and they start noticing it. And it's this developing a certain amount of awareness, because then you begin to understand much more how people interact. Because if you actually keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, you haven't got too many fixed ideas. People will teach you what's going on. But you need the courage just to let go and be okay.
Yep. The party, as I said, tell people the party is outside your head, not inside your head. If you want to be able to get results and help people do things, you've got to be able to pay attention outside. Too many times people go in here and they start thinking, oh, blah, 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 I take what they're thinking. I think I know what they want. No, you don't know. You don't know. You only know what they're telling you, and you only know based on their behaviors, what's going on. So It's where you're going to, it's time to go inside your head when you want to relax and you're all by yourself. But if you're in the action, you got to stay outside here. Pay attention to what's going on. Like I said, everything you do is an intervention, and you're going to get a response. And knowing enough about that will give you an idea of what you are doing that's working and what you're doing that's not working.
Absolutely. And learning about this stuff, it gives you some ideas of what to start looking for, and what some of the things to start noticing. It gives you a clue where to start with this. Okay, brilliant. As I say, I wanted to give an idea that even exploring some of the principles will help us tune up our communication skills. I want to look at a bit about language, and to me, some of the classic hypnotic language patterns are things like commands, embedded commands, pivot grammar, and I'm going to talk about a few more. But if we take commands, John, what's your definition of a command?
Usually, a command is a flat out statement, actually, that you're actually telling someone to do a behavior. If I said to you, stand up, that's a command, right? And doesn't mean you're going to stand up necessarily. If there's a whole lot of other factors involved, but that's a flat out command. A command is going to require a behavior, if you would.
Now, and I quite like, because I sometimes describe it as, if a command is done well, the person will do it without thinking. This might be a slightly different take on it, but in essence, sometimes we want people to think about things, and sometimes we just want people to do them. But what I found is, in hypnosis, if we can do a command so it's simple, it's unambiguous. Have I got it the right way around? It's very clear. It's unambiguous. It has a sort of command tone down. We use our hands or our body language to emphasize it. There's almost enough coming at somebody, so it becomes very easy for them to do it rather than to think. If there is a fire in the cinema, you do not want them to think about whether they leave. You want them to leave.
Yeah.
And to me, commands is being able to talk in such a direct way that it's easier for somebody to take action than not take action. What is my take? But it may be a bit.
No, that's good. One of the examples I like to demonstrate for people, very simple, and most people know about this. They've heard about it, but sometimes they think it's just kind of the comedy or the humorous part of things. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where we would tell someone, don't think of a blue elephant. And you all just did. Only because I told you in the sentence, blue elephant. The fact also is that, because people have different ideas about what the language does or not does, is your brain doesn't know what to do with that word, that negative don't, at the first level of you figure, it's called transderivation. In other words, you hear the word, you derive the meaning of those words for you. So it's not that it doesn't, people say, well, the unconscious doesn't, but at the first level, it doesn't know what to do with it, but then it will do it. So it'll figure out, don't think about the blue elephant, but what does it think about next? But that's not even the point here. The point is children, because if you don't think training, because they think, I'm correcting my child. No, you're actually training them.
Yeah.
Every time you open your mouth and tell them to do something, okay? And here's what happens. I'm going to use a very simple example, okay? The kid's got the glass of water or whatever it is, and they look at the parent says to them, don't spill the milk. Now, I don't know about the rest of you. Well, actually, I do. Most of you right now probably made a picture of spilled milk. Now, to the child, that's a goal. You make goals inside your mind. You got a picture. If I said, don't spill the milk, you most likely see spilled milk. And your little brain, because your little child goes, I can do this. Out goes the hand, over goes the glass, there goes the milk. And the parents look at the child and they'll say, you don't listen. Well, yes, they do. They listen better than us because they're processing every word. Now, instead of saying that, and I don't understand how this could be cultural, I really don't know. Why not say to the child, put the glass down carefully, move the glass away from the edge of the table. Because then they'll see that, okay? And that's the behavior they'll do because you're teaching them. It's very simple, but we don't think about it like that. We take our language for granted. How? So if you, and I told one set of parents one time because the child knocked the glass over and they laughed. They said, "Yay, da-da, I did it." Right? They feel good. Picture on the outside matches the picture on the inside. Very simple. Very simple explanation. They said, this kid, what am I going to do with this kid? I said, stop hypnotizing him in that fashion. And they looked at me like, what? I said, I know you're not using hypnosis, but you're actually programming their brain. You're teaching them a set of skills. So how about giving them the behavior and explaining the behavior you want them to see in their brain? And maybe they'll actually do that. It's very interesting. My son, when he was young, because like I said, we teach about the linguistics part stuff. My son said to me one time, he said, Daddy, this weekend, could we go to the zoo? And I said to him, and he was a ripe 4 or 5 years old. I said to him, we'll see. And he said, you know what that means, Dad? I said, no. Yeah. I said, yeah, it means we'll see. He goes, it means I see us going and you don't. So, and I thought, oh boy, when you start listening to the child, you start getting instant feedback about how you're behaving and whether or not it's successful in terms of the communication I want to deliver or not. So I had to start listening a lot more. We typically go, yeah, later. We kind of look at the kids and go like that. But you're raising these children. You're raising them and you're teaching them. You're training them. So how you do that? Everything's about the communication. How are you going to use the words? How are you going to construct the sentences? Things like that.
Now I'm going to build on that a bit. When I first started teaching people to use hypnotic commands, this was it's like you learn so much when you teach this. People aren't what you think they are. But I actually found I got some people to work out what they wanted the other person to do, and it was really people. I was amazed how people couldn't articulate what they want somebody else to do, because to be able to do command, you've got to be able to tell them what to do. And it was really funny. There were 1 or 2 people that thought they told somebody else what to do, but they never did. And then they were annoyed when other people didn't do what they wanted, but they never actually told them what they wanted. So sometimes going right back to basics and saying, what do I actually want the other person to do? Not be clever with communication. Can I express it in simple language that they understand? It's far more complicated than people realize. And I wouldn't have believed it had I not people who weren't aware of the words they were using, because they thought they'd explained it, but nobody else heard them.
Yep. There's a whole set of words that we use, but we're not aware of what the impact is, or they go with the verbs, kind of thing. So it's like, so I want you to X, or you should do X, or you will do X, or it'd be nice if you did X. But all of those things are going to have a different impact on the listener. Very simple. Even the children, if you said to them, listen, I want you to go to bed tonight. I want you to go to bed. It's time to go to bed. I want you to go to bed. And the child will say, well, I want a new bicycle. These kids aren't stupid, They know how to turn things right back around. Well, I'd like for you to do your homework. Okay. Yeah. And I'd like for you to leave me alone. I mean, these kids will start, they do these things. So someone once said to me, well, how do you go around that? I said, it's very simple. Take all of those words away. It's going to sound like, you're going to sound like you're the boss sheriff of the department, and you are, do your homework, clean your room. Those are commands straight out. In our own language, when we have computers, if you wanted to, because people say, oh, our brain is like a computer. I'm not so sure about that, but human brains program computers. And inside of a computer program, a simple one, basic stuff, if in this computer program is the command to, let's say, open a browser, the command is going to be open browser. Period. That's it. Not, gee, I think I would like to go on the internet now, so let's think about which browser we want to open up. That's not going to be in a command line. They might have other equations and equation lines, but when it comes down to the actual command of this thing doing what it's supposed to do, it's going to be a command. flat out. Now, can you dress it up? Sure. And then people say, well, how much should you dress it up? I said, until you don't get what you want, then turn it into a command. I managed people I worked in corporate. I had to manage people. We're talking hourly folks, the workforce of America, but they're also Teamsters. So did you have to be nice to them? Sometimes. There was nothing wrong with being nice, but oftentimes you had to just come out and do a command. Say, okay, fix the damn thing. What'd you fix? Just fix it. They go, well, I'd like you to fix this thing. And they go, okay, I want to get around to it. Well, you weren't serious when you said, I'd like for you to fix it. But if you said, all right, enough is enough, fix it.
And I think there's something else important that comes from this, because we're going to move on to embedded commands in a second. But I've always had the view, but before you could do the embedded commands, you have to know what the command is. And which means you have to know what you want the other person to do and to be able to articulate it very simply and very cleanly. Because a lot of people try to almost weaken the commands, but they haven't got a command to start with, and therefore they weaken it even further. People have even less of a clue what they want them to do. So my view is you've got to start by knowing what you want and being able to express it in simple language. It may be appropriate, as you rightly say, it may be far simpler to tell people what you want, because at least they know what you want. You're not playing games. And then you come to embedded commands, where you're almost giving people a choice whether to do it or not. You'll make it into a positive suggestion where it's up. You may choose to the kid. You may choose to go to bed now.
Yeah, you've got to know basically if you're issuing a command or you're issuing a suggestion or you're giving a set of choices.
Yes.
Oftentimes, like I said, when I got really interested in this, it was because I realized I had choices. But if someone said to me, no, you do this, you do that, no, I'd have polarized right away and went, no, the hell you, right? But I realized I had choices. So then in my own mind, what I had to do was go in and go, so if someone issued me a command that I didn't care that it was a command, I didn't like it, let's say, that I would go in and go, okay, what's the choice? What's the other choice here? I'm either going to do this or what? And I would try to figure that out myself in order to be able to be more successful in my own life, that whole thing. But you got to know, what are you doing? Are you issuing a command? Police officers know this. I don't know if there are any police officers online.
Interesting. No, I'm sorry. Say a bit more.
Well, it's very simple, and some of them will get a different reaction, I guess, from the person being issued the sentence. Let's say.
Right.
In as far as I know, and I know loads of officers, they don't know this. Most of them don't. They're not aware of this. So if an officer here would say to you, do you mind stepping out of the car? Okay, that's a question. And you can say, yes, I mind stepping out of the car. Because it's not a command. But at the point they issue a command, you have to obey. If they say step out of the car, you have to step out of the car. So that's a simple way of saying, first of all, as soon as the lights are on, you're going hypnosis. I don't care who you are. You're going to go into a certain hypnotic state. It happened to me a couple of times, of course. But if they say to you, do you know why I stopped you? Well, that's a question. It's a simple question. They want to find some information out from you. Yeah. And actually, the craziest thing is, although I'm not suggesting this, you're not required to answer their questions. You could just say, I'm not answering your question. Okay, I don't suggest that, by the way, but I'm going with flat out, the mathematics of it, if you would. Yeah. So, but at the point that they're giving you choices, that's very different than just issuing commands, because if you refuse a command, now you're impeding an investigation, and you're what's the other set of words? I forget what the other thing is called, but basically you're disobeying officer. Especially if they're not asking you to do something stupid. They say jump off the cliff over there. You can tell them whatever you want at that point. But when they say step out of the car, you got to step out of the car. If they say put your hands up, put your hands up. But that's a command. They're issuing commands, and that they can do. Now they have to have certain criteria in order to be able to do that lawfully. But that's not the time to question it. But again, it's hypnosis.
No, I like that description.
Or they're giving you choices. So
and it's to get over to people. It gets us to force what we mean by communication. I know it sounds like hypnosis about doing woo-woo stuff, but actually it starts with knowing what we want. and to being able to articulate it cleanly. So when I started doing hypnosis, it wasn't quite like what I thought. I had to have the discipline of working out what I wanted to say and what the impact on what I was saying. So embedded commands, I'm not going into too much detail about embedded commands, but it's a softer command where you're giving, actually you may have a different view, but to me, it's a softer way of giving a command. So you're giving people the choice while still giving them the option of doing the command if they're okay doing it.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to mention a couple of other bits of linkage language, bits of language, and you may want to bring some more up. I quite like the idea of linkage language where you link two things together with something like the word and, because I have a view that the brain likes linking things together. And it sometimes links things together that may, in logic, have no links at all. And it could be, I could say something like, you're listening to me and therefore you're learning. Well, you can say there's no reality between the two, but the brain normally accepts it. And it may be, if I think it's of interest, if it's of use for the person to think they're learning, it might be useful saying it. But it's this concept that you can link all sorts of things together in your language, and the brain may accept things that have no logical connection, but it still may be useful for somebody to be able to link them together. How would you describe linkage language?
They link things together, and you can use time.
Oh yeah.
So I could say, as you go to this meeting, think about what it is you want to accomplish here in the meeting for our department. I mean, so I'm going to link that in there like that. And by the way, you can link forever if you really wanted to. In some cases, in using altered state language, I'll refer to it as, some sentences don't end. They don't end for a long time, because as you're thinking about how you want to get your ideas across to people and inputting that into their images and that they make inside their mind, along with the sound of your voice, as you sit down, even in your chair, and look at these people that you're speaking with, what kind of a look are you going to be giving them? Because you see that at that point in time just now, that sentence was really long and there wasn't like an end of the sentence. And because if there's no end of the sentence, they're going to continue to follow along, just because they're listening and the information is still going in, that sentence is still going in, those words are still going in. And they've got, I got a saying, people say things like, they go, one of my favorites is to say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. No. One word is worth 1,000 pictures. That's how I think about it. So, and when I teach people these things, I say, choose your words carefully, because while you might think a picture's worth 1,000 words, the fact is the one picture is really worth, the one word is worth 1,000 pictures. Because if I said one word, you're going to make all these different images depending on how I say the word. Now, if that's just one word and we link it to another set of words and another set of words and another set of words, you're going to be doing all kinds of things inside your brain. So the other idea about hypnosis, to me, or altered states, if you would, is that to me one of the ways I look at the definition of it is whose trance state are you in? Whose are you in, and when, and how did you get there? So unless you're the driver, and you're the receiver instead of the driver, let's say, then how did you get into that state? It's all happened to us at one point or another where we kind of drifted off somehow with someone, speaking to us. And next thing we know is we're maybe we're buying something we didn't intend on buying. I'm not suggesting that that's one way to do it, but the fact is that's what happens. That's exactly what happens. So how can I influence you, as an example? And does that mean hypnotic language? I'll define hypnotic again. Is whose state are you in? How'd you get there? And when are you? When are you in that state? You'll learn a lot more that way if you're paying attention to what's happening to you or with you or even for you. It's good to know. Good to learn.
Excellent. Okay. little bit about linkage language. The other thing I'm going to mention briefly is process language, where you give people a process and you take a lot of the detailed meaning out. So you let them put their detailed in. And when, excuse me, when I first did this, I thought it was a load of nonsense. But then I began to realize that we are given a lot of not useful suggestions by a lot of people in the universe. And sometimes giving people a useful suggestion without too much detail in there so we can fit it into our circumstances can be extremely useful. As an example, it could be as simple as you're attending this session today. Over the next few days, either consciously or unconsciously, you'll think of some of the things we've talked about, and to your surprise and delight, you'll find yourself putting some of the good stuff into operation. And the strange thing is, you may do it without any conscious thought at all. Now, at one level, it's word salad and meaningless, but at another level, I'm giving somebody a suggestion that if they actually listen to what they say, if they choose the good bits and they practice it, they will learn, which is, of course, true and useful. So I found that this idea of process language, where you give people a process that if they followed and if they put their own stuff in, it will take them something useful, can be a very powerful means of communication to get people to do things right. So again, let me throw it at you. How would you describe process language? How would you use it?
I'm going to dissect that word a little bit in terms of process, not the word in itself. I find it even. I'm going to choose one word.
Yeah.
Where people would use the word, but if they use the word differently, they would get to another result, perhaps,
Right.
or better result. I don't really know. The one word I don't like is when people say, "Well, it's a process." The people say it's a process. It's going to take a while. No, we don't make decisions over a long time. We know pretty quick if we're going to want to do something or not. We might have to gather some information, but so I'm going to take this one word. I know we use it in business all the time, that kind of thing, and even in our personal lives. So the word is decision.
All right.
Okay? And that's from a verb, decide. So if I were to say to you, have you made a decision yet? And that's a phrase, by the way. That's made a decision.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's inside of that is a process, but it's static. In other words, there's no movement to it. It's already supposedly done. Have you made a decision yet? And the answer is yes or no. You're not going to get a yes or no most of the time. You're going to get, well, you see, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get this.
Yeah.
Which means no, I haven't made a decision yet. So let's take that word decision, okay? And in my business, what we do, NLP wise anyway, that's a nominalization. That's taking a verb and turning it into a noun, decision. Now, if I were to say to you, are you ready to decide? That opens the door a little bit differently. Okay, because I'm just using the verb in itself without saying, have you made a decision, or you're going to make a decision? I could say, are you going to decide? Okay, I can use the other words the same. I still just change the verb change the word to a verb from nominalization. But the other one that gets it kicking in and thinking gets the brain moving, because if there's movement, you see, as far as I can tell, if there's movement in the verb for the verb, the people will engage it better inside their mind.
Right.
And that means you're not putting any pressure on them just yet about making the decision. But so it's like this: are you still deciding? Now, if I wanted to put that into some kind of as you're thinking about where we're going to be headed in the next 6 months in this job, are you still deciding about what it is you want to be able to accomplish by the third quarter? Now, that's a little bit different.
I like that.
Well, it's only a little bit different because of the verb. Now, I could say, people say, well, communication here is no good. Well, that's a static word, and it comes from a verb, communicate. But if I said something like, how could we be communicating differently in order to get our jobs done more efficiently? That's very different. So by changing I like to change the words around so that it gets some movement into it, especially if you're issuing a command, here, do this, yes, no, behavior, boom. Do it or don't do it. Paint the house, don't paint the house. I don't know. But in a lot of times when it's going to be the process, use the verb as a processing verb. Okay, so make it into an ing for the verb processing. Okay. But I don't like, when people, even people, I go to team building things. I don't do team building so much anymore. I just do totally different than anybody else these days. But it's about engaging in activities,
Yeah.
not an activity. Okay. People want to go to an activity. I go, bring me a problem. The real one in your business, bring me a problem. Okay. And we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to have you go through that as a set of activities in order to solve this problem. Because people will typically say, did you make a decision yet? And they'll say, well, no, we don't have enough information. Now, in terms of receiving that answer, I go into my own brain and think, in order for you to say you don't have enough information, you must know what's missing. Either that or you're making this up because you just haven't made a decision yet, but you're going to say, well, we don't have enough information. And my answer to that is, if you know you're missing information, then why don't you just go get what it is? Then we can finish deciding this. See, because well, I've seen these processes. They go static. They go. It's in process. What do you mean it's in process?
Yeah.
Well, it's a process. Oh, no. Everything's a process, but you know what? They don't have to be long-term things that are going on. Our brains do not work that slowly. Our brains work very fast. You may not like the decision once you make it. You may not like deciding that thing. You may not like that activity. But the fact of the matter is, it shouldn't take that long. Our brains do not work that slowly.
Okay. Going back to what we're doing, we're looking at, in examining language patterns.
Yep.
In learning about hypnosis, you actually learn an awful lot. It's a sort of, there's a lot there hidden that we don't notice, that you start noticing when you start exploring this sort of thing.
Yep.
So because time has sort of moved on as we've been having this conversation, okay, and we've got 10 minutes left, what I'm going to suggest is the next stage was looking at some of the elements of a hypnotic induction, or what you do if you were doing more formal hypnosis. So, John, can I set you the challenge of having 5 minutes and just playing with a hypnotic thing for our audience?
Sure.
To sit back, enjoy, or do
yeah,
whatever.
Sure. Just remember, I don't do hypnosis. I only talk to people a little bit. I mean, that's what I tell them anyway. I do that regularly because otherwise they expect me to pull a watch out and swing it in front of their eyes. First of all, let me identify the three things. There's only 3 steps to doing if you want a formal hypnosis thing. One is the induction. Okay. Then there's the stuff in the middle, the meat in the middle, and then there's the outduction. Those are the 3 parts. Okay. Not more complicated than that. So the induction just starts off with, giving a set of very simple instructions. Like if I were to say to you right now, you're sitting there, I don't know where you're sitting, but I know you're probably have a screen in front of you or something. Just go ahead and close your eyes anyway. Just close your eyes. And as you do that close your eyes thing, I want to ask you to do something specific. And it's something that we hadn't mentioned here, but I'm probably going to mention it another time down the road somewhere. But as you slowly start to go down deeper and deeper and deeper inside, which means to relax, you can feel the drop of gravity on a head as it goes blip, blip, blip. And that drop of gravity will continue to go on and melt down across the sides of your face, even the front of your face, the back of your head, down your neck. It'll go down along your shoulders and across your chest, and it'll continue to float down, that drop of gravity, and each one after that, down through your legs. So you start to relax even more. And you might even notice you're breathing a little more carefully, maybe a little more slowly. I don't know. Whichever makes you feel more comfortable. And if you take a look at something that's really specific for you right now, even though you don't know exactly what it is, I like to use an element that we call timelines. And if you put that right in front of you there, however you have a timeline, and the timeline means you've got a past, a present, and a future, but this makes it easy for me to do it probably in less than 5 minutes. And if I have you slowly mark a spot where the present moment is and ask you to slowly float above your timeline, if you take a look from that perspective and look down, you can see the full continuum of the past, the present, and the future. Now, you can do all kinds of things with your timelines, which is why I bring it up this way. If you were to slowly float along the full continuum of the past, you might start to notice a few things. Because even when you were born, before you were born, actually, you had to learn to breathe. You don't know that, do you? You do now. You had to learn to beat your heart. You had to learn to run your body's metabolism. And then one day, poof, there you were. You were born. And from that point, you learned to crawl. Then you learned to walk, run, hop, skip, jump. You went to school. You learned reading, writing, arithmetic, all of those things. You learned how to make decisions. You learned how to make friends. You learned how to make enemies. You learned how to love. You learned how to hate. You see, most of the behaviors that we have, we've learned. Now, if you continue slowly floating across that past and get over to the present moments, you go past the present and you start taking a look at the future, you can do things, even though every time you are going to think something in your mind, you're only in the present moment when you're doing it. Because you see, time doesn't really exist. It only exists in terms of our mind and how we space things, where we place memories. Sometimes we place them one side, one time we place them in the other side. But the fact of the matter is, you see, we have memories of the past. We have memories for the future. Common denominator, memories. So you remember where you're going to be tomorrow. You could change that memory if you really wanted to. You could change it so you'll be someplace else. But that requires that you do that process of deciding at the present moment to make it a different event where you'd want to be. It's that simple. I'm not even asking you to do that particular activity at the moment. But you could slowly float across the future and you can start to see different activities that you have already planned. You can see what you're going to be doing this weekend. You can see what you're going to be doing the following weekend. Maybe Monday looks different than Wednesday. Maybe Wednesday looks different than Friday. I don't know. I leave that all up to you. But I want you to know how much easier it is once you're inside your mind that you can slowly begin to float back to the present moment and then slowly float back inside the timeline. Float inside of the present moment. But I want you to orient your timelines again, just for this next moment or two, or maybe three. Rotate it around so that the past is behind you now. Let it start from the back of your head, maybe an inch or two behind the back of your head. Keep the present inside your head and start the future right there in front of you, but pull it on back just a wee little bit so that the future just starts just behind your eyeballs. This is a good one because you see, when you're deciding things and you orient your timelines in this way, when you're acting in the present moment and you're looking straight into the future, it makes it much easier to take a look at the pros, the cons, the things that will benefit from you, the things that you'll benefit from each side of that equation, and then rotate the timeline back around in any way that's most useful and most appropriate for you, and feel the relaxation. I'm going to ask you to do the following thing. I'm going to ask you to slowly float up outside your body again. Keep the timeline exactly where it is. And then I'm going to ask you to slowly take a nice deep breath. Nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you do that, just think inside your mind and say, ah. Sometimes if you resonate just right, resonate a vibration that goes down your spine, it'll go right up to the base of your brain and it'll tickle your brain actually, and you make really nice neurochemicals, which is one of the things hypnosis is about as well. It's so you can change your neurochemistry just enough so you can relax or you can get excited. Either way, hypnosis isn't just about doing something mild. Lots of times you can see people dancing in hypnotic states, and therefore they can increase their energy. They can increase this, they can increase that. So just remember, it's only about altered states and which one you want to be in, how, when, and where, and whose. That's the really important part. So just reorient, put your timeline back the way it's most useful and comfortable for you. And then I'm going to ask you to slowly come on back here and open your eyes. I'll even count back from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And take a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And say, life is good. Life is wonderful. Because it really is. You have all the control you need over your own brain. Learn to use it really well. Learn to relax. Learn to do things you want to be able to do. This is only the beginning. It's not even the tip of the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. So I want to thank you very much. Come on back, open your eyes, take a look. Maybe the screen looks different. Who knows? Maybe you look different.
Thank you. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that. So what I'd like to do now is to sort of begin to wrap up a bit, because actually we've hit time. That's an interesting concept. we sort of hit time, so I'd like to summarize a little bit, but I do want to get over this point that even a little bit of exploration of what we've been talking about will fine-tune your communication skills. It can't not. It's sort of, you start noticing things, you start noticing how you interact, you start noticing how anybody else interacts. And the better you get, as we talked about before, the better you get at it, the more influence that you have. So if this is of interest to you, I do recommend it as an exciting, enjoyable journey. John, from your perspective, we're going to put the links to your and Richard's websites into the
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
into a note. However, is there anything that you're doing you'd like to bring to people's attention?
Well, we're always doing something somewhere. We just got back from Italy, and then Richard went off into the UK and stuff. But really, just go, we don't do the hard sell stuff. Just go take a look at what we got to offer. Really, got a program coming up in July. It's in Orlando, Florida. That's got some basic things in it, and you can actually learn how to make changes really fast, really, really quick if that's what you're interested in, and even then how to help other people to make changes very fast and very ethically is the way I like to put it.
Absolutely excellent.
Thanks.
As we say, we've come to the end. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I very much appreciate it. I am doing a monthly. My voice is a bit strange, so I apologize for that. I'm going to do a monthly thing like this. Thank you for watching, and have an enjoyable life, or or something. So I'll let John have the last words, but as I say, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for signing up and all that sort of stuff. And John, as our guest, you have the last words.
Sure. Hey, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Hope you get something out of this. And Michael, I want to thank you for having me here. Really, thank you so much.